Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Magen podcast, where we try to address various HR related issues. I'm Jaza, your host for the day. Last time, our topic was handling interviews, and for today, our topic is handling salary negotiations and post interview etiquettes. This is all from the perspective of the candidate. We will major be looking at four questions throughout this podcast, and answering these questions is Jasper Chand, an industry veteran and the managing partner of Magen David. Hi, Jasper. Welcome back to the podcast.
Hi, Jeza. Thank you so much for having me back. It's always a pleasure coming back over here. And I also thank all our viewers who've been so great with their support. And my appeal to all of you is that in case you have any senior hiring requirements, please do not hesitate in contacting us through our website.
So, Jasper, like earlier, let's start this podcast with you sharing with us some crazy experiences you had while helping your candidates with the negotiations.
Where do you love crazy so much, Jeza? You always put me in a spot. I mean, you're starting a podcast by putting me in a spot straight away. Yeah? Don't waste any time. Well, anyways, so I have one instance which I wouldn't call crazy per se, but it was a different experience for me at that time. The first one. So there was this fairly senior gentleman whom we had represented, and he was liked by the client. The client was in Mumbai. The gentleman at that time was in Gurgaon. After a hard salary negotiation, he finally accepted the offer, and it was a big ticket for us. But you know, as the days went by, and when he was about to relocate to Mumbai, we sensed that he was developing some sort of cold feet. So when we deep dived into it, tried to understand his concerns, which was very important. So we realized that in Gurgaon, this gentleman was living in a very large bungalow with multiple rooms. He and his wife had two big dogs. Now the concern was that he wanted a separate room for his dogs. Although the client had, approved a 4 BHK in Mumbai, but still he wanted a separate room for the dogs. So at that time, you know, we thought this was a crazy sort of a demand from his side, but then we realized no, there are emotions attached to it. So we went back to the client, cajoled our client, and he was gracious enough to, allow him a larger accommodation. So yeah, I wouldn't call it crazy, but yes, that was one different experience that we have had during negotiations.
That sounds really interesting and intense at the same time. So, how should a negotiation go?
Well, first and foremost, whatever the outcome, you know, the candidate should always be very, very professional about it. So normally what I tell my candidates is that they should never lose their cool. They should consider that whatever offer has been made, whether they like it or they don't like it is not the HR's fault. The HR is also doing his or her job. You know. So the response, I wouldn't say, generally people react to the first offer. Don't do that. Respond to it. And that's the time when I recommend everybody, or when I do it myself. I go back to my candidate, ask him exactly the number that he's looking for, as in the CTC, and then ask him the logical reasons as to why is he asking for whatever that he's asking for, which I then go back and convey to the client in a proper manner, and try to make the client understand my candidate's point of view. So during negotiations, there could be hard negotiations, there could be to and fro between negotiations, between offers rather. And when the final offer comes in, it is it is the time for the candidate to make a decision. whether to accept it or decline it. That's the time he has to do that. If he accepts it, then the offer has to be accepted verbally and in writing at the earliest. Same goes if he declines it. But if he is declining it, then I would always recommend candidates to be politically very correct while declining the offer, because it's a small world, you never know.
So during this entire negotiation process, what are some of the top pointers or your advice for the candidates?
Okay, so you were kind enough to send me this question. So I've penned down some points for this, keeping them very short, not getting into details. But before I get into those points, let me tell you that our negotiation process starts with the very first interaction that we have with the candidate. You know, we try to rationalize the candidate's expectations from day one itself, lest we get a shock later on, which nobody wants. You know. So coming back to the points,
Yeah.
the advice during the negotiation process that we or I would normally want to give to the candidates. So the first and foremost, I think, would be to always seek your consultant's advice. Keep the consultant in the loop. I've seen instances where, you know, candidates probably don't trust their consultants that much. End of the day, consultants are thorough professionals, and they're just trying to mediate uh, with all transparency and honesty between you and the client. And then it's their hard-earned reputation also at stake. So you have to trust the consultant.
Okay.
Number two, I would say, when the client is asking for your salary documentations, generally it is the time when they've decided on you, and that's when they're asking for the salary documents. So there is you shouldn't hesitate and submit all your salary documents. Needless to say, they'll be kept confidential.
All right.
Submit all your salary documents in one go, and also monetize all the perks that you are getting. Right?
Okay.
If you are getting ESOPs, clearly mention what is the value of those ESOPs and other details like vesting period, etc., etc. Be very practical about it. Some of the ESOPs you would have vested, some would be still to be vested. You can only factor in, while salary negotiations, the loss you'll make by not vesting on the ESOPs in the short term, let's say 1 year's time. You can't go to the long term thing and try and get the client to compensate you for that loss. They will never do that. If you have any buyout options, clearly spell out, because these days most of the clients would like their selected candidates to join as soon as possible.
Okay.
Then I've also seen, in the past, some, not many, but some instances where the candidate is getting the salary paid into two accounts, let's say his own and his wife's account, or he's getting part payment of his salary in cash. Now, ये सब झोलझाल नहीं करने का, because all good organizations will never factor all of this in. They will only factor your salary which you are making on paper. Right?
Makes sense.
Then at this particular juncture, I also tell my candidates to be pretty upfront and to give a concrete number or a percentage of hike that you're looking for. That helps in negotiations. That helps in making the process very faster. That also helps the client to actually make that offer to you and present that offer to you ASAP.
Right.
But I also tell my candidates that they have to keep in mind that The salary negotiations need to be rationalized. You have to look at the stature of the client as well. Let's say, for example, what I'm trying to say over here is the bigger the organization, the more stable that organization is. So, lesser the risk. But there, the percentage of hike may not be very, very high, and vice versa. So, with due respect to all the startups, I've seen instances where they've gone out and given even 100% hikes, 120% hikes, but then they were very quick to fire the candidate very soon. So that's what I'm trying to say over here. Then candidate should never try to correct his salary when they're looking to change their jobs. I would never represent these kind of candidates. There have been cases where people come up to me and they say my peers are getting so and so salary, which I am not making. So my next move I want to make with your client, I need that salary corrected. अरे भाई मेरी client की क्या गलती इसमें, right? Why should my client be penalized for having offered you a position? So I don't represent these kind of candidates. आपके peers आपसे ज़्यादा पैसा ले रहे हैं तो you introspect ही भैया क्या कहाँ गलती हुई है, right?
Yeah.
Then if the first offer that is made to you, if you don't like it, don't get angry, don't react. Many a times I've seen even the senior guys getting angry at the HR. उनकी गलती नहीं है, they're just doing their job. That's their job. So respond to the HR with a cool mind. गुस्सा निकालना ही है तो हम पे निकाल लो. हम कंसल्टेंट्स तो होते ही पंचिंग पे आ गए. बॉस को भी झेलना, क्लाइंट को भी झेलना, कैंडिडेट को भी झेलना, सब हम पे गुस्सा निकालते हैं. बट क्लाइंट पे कभी नहीं. Respond, never react. Then whatever number that you're asking for, which I've already explained in the podcast, have a logic behind it. Let's say for example you're asking for a hike, and I've had cases where people are moving from a 5-day week company to a 6-day week company, and they probably have to travel more. So they give that logic of asking for a hike for whatever number that they're asking for. And one example I've already given earlier in the podcast. So what I'm trying to say over here is always have a logical reason. Never be irrational about the salary hike. And after the final offer has been made and you've accepted the offer, then there is no going back. You shake hands, the deal is done. Never try and go back and renegotiate that accepted offer. That's a big no-no.
So, what are some steps for the candidates to follow after they've accepted the offer?
So, after the candidate has accepted the offer, one should write a formal mail accepting the offer at the earliest. Number one. Then one should go and have a discussion with one's current boss and the HR at the earliest.
Okay.
We have a process. We take them through the entire steps. We also guide them, advise them at each and every stage. Then once the candidate has submitted the resignation to this current organization, sent a copy of that to the client and the consultant. In case the targeted date of joining is to be overshot by any chance, immediately let it be known to your consultant and the client. The acceptance of the resignation by your current management should also be sent over to the client and the consultant ASAP. Then you should also indicate when you are getting relieved and what is the exact date of joining. so that the client knows and they prepare everything accordingly. The other thing which I always advise my candidates is to be a thorough professional. Once you've accepted an offer with the client, join that client. There are times when candidates get multiple offers and are lured by those offers. Don't do that. जहाँ जबान दी है वहीं ज्वाइन करने का you know. And the last thing which I always tell my candidates is join on the designated date. हम सबको हार्ट अटैक मत दो प्लीज.
Well, Jasper, that's our time. Thank you so much for another informative session.
Well, thank you so much for having me over here, Jesus. It's always a pleasure coming back. And I also thank all our viewers for all the great support that they've shown us. Please go back to our YouTube channel of Magen David Search Partners. Like and share in great numbers with all your connects. And also subscribe to our channel. All your suggestions, your advice are most welcome. Please do send those at the earliest. Good day. God bless.